I was folding my grandson's school uniforms when a loud thump came from upstairs, sounding like a gunshot in our old house. At 67, I had a gut feeling that something was wrong. My instincts, honed from years of teaching, were screaming danger. I put down Mason's shirt and slowly climbed the creaky stairs. Craig's bedroom door was wide open. He was frantically throwing clothes into a black travel bag, not bothering to fold anything. His work laptop glowed on the messy bed, showing many open windows. "Going somewhere?" I asked from the doorway. He didn't look up. "Business trip. Last minute." The lie hung heavy in the air. Craig worked for a local computer repair company. They didn't send him on business trips. "For how long?" "Not sure yet." He grabbed his toiletries, knocking over a framed photo of Linda, Mason's mother, holding him as a baby. The glass cracked on the floor, but Craig stepped over it without a glance. My heart ached. That photo had been there since Linda died giving birth to Mason. Craig used to kiss it every night. Now, it was just broken glass. "Craig, stop!" I walked into the room. "Talk to me. What's happening?" He finally met my eyes, and I saw a cold, empty look. No guilt, no sadness, just a chilling determination, almost relief. "I'm leaving, Mom. I should have done this years ago." His words hit me hard. All these years I'd raised Mason while he dealt with his grief, more than a decade of being the mother Mason needed, while Craig drifted away into his computer and late-night activities I chose to ignore. Over a decade of holding our family together with my teacher's pension and a grandmother's love. "What about Mason?" "He's better off with you. He always has been." Craig zipped the suitcase shut. The sound echoed through the house, probably reaching Mason's room where he was supposed to be doing homework. "You can't just leave your son." "I'm not leaving him. I'm leaving him with the person who actually raised him." Craig picked up the suitcase. "You've been his real parent since day one. Now it's official." The cruel words left me speechless. He walked past me towards the stairs and I grabbed his arm. "Craig, please. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it as a family." He pulled away as if I were a stranger. "There is no family, Mom. There's just you and Mason playing house while I pay the bills. Well, now you can figure out how to pay them yourself." My blood ran cold. What does that mean? But Craig was already going downstairs, dragging his suitcase. I followed, my slippers catching on the worn carpet. In the living room, Mason sat at the old desk, doing algebra. He looked up as we entered, seeing his father's suitcase and my worried face with those smart brown eyes that reminded me so much of Linda. "Going somewhere, Dad?" Craig paused at the front door. For a moment, I thought he might change his mind as he looked at his son. Mason was tall and thin like Craig had been, but with Linda's quiet, thoughtful nature. "I need some time away, buddy. Grandma will take care of you." "For how long?" "I don't know yet." Mason nodded, like he was just taking notes. "Okay." The simple acceptance in his voice broke my heart. No tears, no begging, just quiet understanding, as if he'd expected this. Craig opened the front door, and the cool October air filled our warm house. "I'll call when I'm settled." "Where are you going?" I asked. "Somewhere I can breathe again." The door closed softly, but it sounded louder than a slam. Through the window, I watched him put his suitcase in his silver car and drive away from the house where his son had lived his whole life. Mason and I stood in the sudden quiet of the living room. The grandfather clock ticked. The furnace hummed. Outside, a car engine faded. "Is he coming back?" Mason asked. I wanted to lie, to shield him from the truth I'd seen in his father's eyes. But Mason was too smart for easy lies. "I don't think so, sweetheart." He closed his algebra book carefully and stacked it with his other school books. Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his young face. "Grandma, don't worry. I'll handle this." His words were so unexpected, so calm and confident, that I almost laughed. Handle what? He was 13. What could he handle about his father leaving us? But something in his voice made me pause. There was no childish bragging, just a calm certainty, like he knew something I didn't. "What do you mean, Mason?" He picked up his books and headed upstairs. "I need to check our bank accounts first." Then we'll know exactly what we're dealing with. Bank accounts. My 13-year-old grandson was talking about bank accounts. "Mason, wait!" But he was already going up to his room, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt huge and empty, full of questions I couldn't answer, and a future I couldn't see. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to our channel Timelines. We're creating a community of incredible women who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. That first night without Craig, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to every creak and groan of the house. Around midnight, I heard it, the soft clicking of computer keys from Mason's room. I walked down the hall in my robe and slippers, stopping outside his door. Light shone from under the door, and the steady typing continued, too focused for a boy who should be asleep. I knocked gently. "Mason, it's past midnight, sweetheart." "Come in, Grandma." I opened the door to find Mason at his desk, still dressed, surrounded by notebooks and printed papers. His laptop screen glowed with what looked like many windows and data I couldn't understand. "What are you doing up so late?" "Research," he said, pointing to the papers on his desk. "I've been going through Dad's digital footprints for the past 3 hours." Digital footprints. I moved closer, trying to make sense of the documents. Bank statements, credit reports, email printouts, all with our family name. "Mason, where did you get these?" Dad isn't very careful with his passwords. He clicked something on his laptop, opening what looked like Craig's email account. "He uses the same one for everything. Linda 2010. My stomach dropped. "You hacked into your father's email?" "Technically, I just logged in with his password. It's not hacking if he left the door unlocked." Mason's calm tone made my head spin. "Grandma, you need to sit down. What I found is worse than we thought." I sank into the chair beside his desk, my legs suddenly weak. "How much worse?" Mason handed me a printed bank statement with my name at the top. I stared at the numbers, blinking to make sure I was reading it right. "This can't be right. My savings account shows $12. "It's right." His young voice carried a heavy sadness. "Dad didn't just take some money when he left. He's been draining our accounts for months." The paper trembled in my hands. $12, my life savings, built over decades of teaching, reduced to almost nothing. "What about Mason's college fund?" Mason handed me another statement. The account that should have had $43,000 showed zero. "No," I whispered. "No, that money was protected. It was in a special education savings account." "Not anymore." Mason pulled up another document on his screen. 3 weeks ago, Dad transferred it all to his personal checking account. Then he moved it somewhere else. I felt like I was drowning in numbers and betrayal. Somewhere else? That's what took me so long to figure out. Mason's fingers moved easily across the keyboard. "Dad's been working with someone. Her name is Vanessa Torres. She works at Meridian Financial Services downtown." He pulled up a social media profile, showing a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile. Professional photos, vacation pictures, inspiring quotes. She's his girlfriend. More than that, she's been helping him move money around, create new accounts, even apply for loans using our information. Mason's jaw tightened with a startling anger. "Grandma, they've been planning this for months." The room spun. I gripped the edge of Mason's desk, trying to understand what he was saying. "What kind of loans?" Mason clicked to another document. "A $30,000 personal loan using your name and social security number. A $15,000 credit card application using my social security number with a fake age listed as 25. They forged all the signatures." Identity theft. My own son had stolen my identity and his child's identity to run away with another woman. "How do you know all this?" "I've been watching Dad's behavior for weeks. The secret phone calls, how he acted when certain emails came in, how he'd quickly close his laptop when I walked into the room." Mason minimized one window and opened another. "I started paying attention because something felt wrong. Then I learned how to see what he was hiding." "Learned how?" "YouTube tutorials mostly. Online forums about computer security. It's not that hard once you understand the basics." I stared at my grandson, this child I'd raised since birth, and realized I'd been living with a stranger. While I was helping him with homework and packing his lunches, he'd been teaching himself cybersecurity. "Mason, this is illegal. What they've done to us." "I know." His voice was calm, steady. "That's why I documented everything. Every transfer, every forged document, every fraudulent application. I have proof of all of it." He opened a folder on his desktop labeled Evidence. My breath caught. Dozens of files, screenshots, bank records, email conversations between Craig and Vanessa discussing their plans. They were going to disappear together. Vanessa had been looking at apartments in different cities. They were planning to change their names and start over with our money. Mason's expression shifted to something I'd never seen before. Not anger, but a cold satisfaction. Their plans hit a few snags today. Before I could ask what he meant, his laptop chimed with an email notification. Mason glanced at the screen and smiled, a smile that sent chills down my spine. That would be Dad's bank calling about the fraud alert I filed this afternoon. "You filed a fraud alert?" "I filed several things today. Fraud alerts, identity theft reports, complaints to the State Banking Commission." Mason leaned back in his chair. "I also sent some very interesting information to Vanessa's employer about her unauthorized access to client accounts." My mouth fell open. "Mason, what have you done?" "I protected us." His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing a school project. "Dad thought he could steal from us and walk away clean. He thought we were too trusting and helpless to fight back." The laptop chimed again. Mason glanced at the new email, and his smile widened. "And that would be confirmation that Vanessa Torres has been suspended from Meridian Financial pending investigation into client account irregularities." I felt dizzy. While I'd been crying myself to sleep and wondering how we'd pay next month's bills, my grandson had been waging digital warfare against the people who'd betrayed us. "How did you learn to do all this?" "The same internet that taught Dad how to commit financial fraud taught me how to stop it." Mason closed his laptop and looked at me directly. "Grandma, they didn't just steal our money. They tried to steal our future. Someone had to make sure there were consequences." I looked around Mason's room with new eyes, at the organized desk, the neat stacks of evidence, the calm determination of a child forced to become his own protector. "What happens now?" Mason stood up and began organizing his papers into careful piles. "Now we wait. Dad's accounts are frozen, Vanessa's career is over, and their apartment hunting has stalled since their loan applications keep being flagged for fraud." He paused, looking younger for a moment, despite everything he'd accomplished. "And tomorrow, we start figuring out how to get our money back." The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and scrambled eggs. I found Mason in the kitchen, fully dressed for school, 2 plates set on our small breakfast table. "You cooked breakfast?" "You need to eat something, and I figured we both needed our strength today." He poured orange juice into my glass with the careful attention of someone much older. "I've been thinking about our next steps." I sat down, marveling at how normal this felt, despite everything that had happened. Mason eating cereal while discussing financial fraud like other kids might talk about their weekend plans. "What kind of next steps?" Mason pulled out a manila folder and opened it beside his breakfast. "I spent the rest of last night digging deeper into Vanessa's background. What I found is going to help us, but it's also pretty disturbing." He handed me a printed document that looked like a police report. "Vanessa Torres has been running financial scams for years. This is from when she worked at Premier Investment Services in Toledo before moving here." I scanned the report, my coffee growing cold as I read. Embezzlement, unauthorized access to client accounts, falsified investment statements. She was arrested, charged, but the case was dropped when she agreed to pay restitution and resign. Mason turned to another page. "Then she moved here to Springfield and got hired at Meridian Financial. They never checked her background properly." "How did you find this?" "Court records are public information. You just have to know where to look." Mason's tone was matter-of-fact, but I could see the intensity in his eyes. "But here's the really interesting part. Vanessa has been stealing from her current clients too. He pulled out more documents, bank statements, investment portfolios, transfer records. Mason, where did you get these? Vanessa uses the same password strategy as Dad. Once I figured out her pattern, I could access her work accounts. He paused, seemingly reading my expression. I know it sounds bad, but Grandma, she's been stealing from elderly people. People your age who trusted her with their retirement savings. My hands shook as I looked through the evidence. Mrs. Frances Miller, 82 years old, missing $30,000 from her pension account. Mr. Richard Hayes, 74, life savings reduced by half. Page after page of victims. This is horrible. It gets worse. Mason clicked something on his laptop, which he'd brought to the breakfast table. Dad knew about all of this. He's been helping her cover her tracks in exchange for help with our money. The screen showed email conversations between Craig and Vanessa. My son discussing how to hide stolen funds, how to create false digital trails, how to make elderly victims think their missing money was due to market losses. Your father helped her steal from other families. He set up fake investment accounts to make the thefts look legitimate. He created false documents to show fake losses. He even helped her identify which clients had the most money and the least family oversight. Mason's young voice carried a disgust that broke my heart. Dad didn't just betray us, Grandma. He's been betraying innocent people for months. I pushed my breakfast away, my appetite completely gone. My son hadn't just stolen from his own family. He'd become a predator, targeting vulnerable elderly people. How many victims? I've identified 17 so far. Total losses of over $400,000. Mason closed the laptop and looked at me seriously. But I think I can help them get their money back. How? The same way I'm going to help us get ours back. I documented everything. Every transaction, every forged document, every fake account. I have proof of where all the money went and how they moved it around. Mason stood up and walked to our kitchen window, looking out at the morning sunshine like a general surveying a battlefield. Yesterday, I focused on stopping them from doing more damage. Today, I start the recovery process. Recovery process? I'm going to contact each victim and provide them with evidence of what happened to their money. Then I'm going to help them file complaints with the proper authorities. He turned back to me, and I'm going to make sure Dad and Vanessa face consequences for every single person they hurt. The determination in his voice was both inspiring and terrifying. My grandson was taking on the responsibility of seeking justice for multiple families, and he was doing it with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Mason, this is so much responsibility for someone your age. Age doesn't matter when you have the skills and the evidence. He sat back down and reopened his laptop. Besides, someone has to do it. These people trusted Vanessa with their life savings. They trusted Dad to protect their investments. They deserve to know the truth. He pulled up what looked like a spreadsheet with names, amounts, and dates. Mrs. Miller doesn't even know her money is missing yet. Vanessa has been sending her fake statements showing gains while actually draining her account. Mr. Hayes thinks he lost money in a bad investment, but really, Vanessa just transferred it to her personal account. How will you contact them? Very carefully. I can't just call them and say their financial advisor is a criminal. I need to approach this properly, with evidence they can understand and verify independently. Mason clicked to another document. I'm going to send anonymous packages to each victim, complete documentation of what happened to their money, instructions for how to report the crimes, and contact information for legal aid services that can help them. Anonymous packages? I can't reveal who I am without compromising the investigation, but I can make sure each person gets the information they need to protect themselves and recover their losses. I watched my grandson organize evidence against financial predators with the same methodical care he used to organize his school supplies. What about us? Our money? That's more complicated because Dad had legal access to our accounts initially, but the fraudulent loans using our identities, that's clearly criminal. Mason pulled up another folder on his screen. I've already filed the paperwork to dispute those loans. The investigation should take a few weeks, but we should be able to get that debt removed from our names. And our actual savings? Mason's expression grew more serious. That's going to take longer, but I think I can trace where the money went and prove it was transferred for illegal purposes. If Vanessa goes to prison for the other thefts, we might be able to recover some of our losses through restitution. If she goes to prison? Oh, she's definitely going to prison. Mason's voice carried absolute certainty. I have enough evidence to convict her 10 times over. The question is whether Dad will cooperate with authorities or go down with her. Mason closed his laptop and looked at me with those serious brown eyes. Grandma, I need you to understand something. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. When the police start investigating, when lawyers get involved, when this becomes public, people are going to ask questions about how a 13-year-old obtained all this evidence. What will you tell them? The truth. That Dad and Vanessa were careless with their digital security, and I was smart enough to document their crimes before they could cover their tracks. He paused. But I need you to be prepared for people to be impressed and scared by what I can do. Are you scared? Mason considered this question with the thoughtfulness that reminded me so much of Linda. No, I'm angry. And anger is more useful than fear when you're fighting for your family. He stood up and gathered his school backpack. I should get to class. I have a chemistry test today, and I still need to maintain my grades while I'm taking down financial criminals. The casual way he transitioned from discussing federal crimes to worrying about his chemistry test would have been funny if it weren't so surreal. Mason. He paused at the kitchen door. I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry you had to grow up so fast. I didn't grow up fast, Grandma. I just discovered I was already grown up. He smiled, and for a moment, he looked like the child I'd raised. Don't worry, we're going to be okay. And so are all the people Dad and Vanessa hurt. After he left for school, I sat in my quiet kitchen, surrounded by evidence of crimes I never could have imagined. My grandson was fighting a war I didn't fully understand, using weapons I couldn't even identify. But for the first time since Craig walked out our door, I felt something besides fear and betrayal. I felt hope. 3 days later, I was sorting through bills at the kitchen table when the phone rang. The caller ID showed Craig's number, and my heart jumped despite everything he'd done to us. Hello, Mom. Craig's voice was strained, desperate, in a way I'd never heard before. We need to talk now. Something's wrong. Everything's falling apart, and I think someone's targeting me and my girlfriend, Vanessa. I glanced toward the stairs where Mason was supposedly doing homework. The soft clicking of computer keys drifted down from his room, just like every evening since Craig left. What kind of targeting? My bank accounts are frozen. The police showed up at my motel asking questions about identity theft. Vanessa got fired from her job, and now she's being investigated by the State Banking Commission. Craig's words tumbled out in a rush. Mom, someone knows everything. They have records of things that should be private. Maybe your private things weren't as private as you thought. This isn't a joke. Whoever's doing this, they have access to emails, bank records, even phone calls between me and Vanessa. They sent her boss a complete file documenting every transaction she's ever made illegally. I felt a chill of pride mixed with concern. Mason had been busy. Craig, maybe this is just consequences catching up with you. No, this is coordinated. This is someone with serious computer skills who wants to destroy us. His voice cracked. Mom, I think they might come after you and Mason next. You need to be careful. The irony was almost laughable. Craig warning me to protect myself and Mason from the very person who was actually protecting us. Where are you staying? A motel outside town. Vanessa and I had to use cash because our credit cards aren't working. Craig paused. Mom, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you and Mason, but I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? I was just going to borrow the money temporarily. Vanessa had this investment opportunity that was guaranteed to triple our money within 6 months. We were going to pay everything back with interest. The same tired lie criminals always told themselves. It was just borrowing. It was going to work out. Nobody was going to get hurt. Craig, you stole Mason's college fund. You used our identities to get loans. That's not borrowing. That's fraud. I know. But Mom, listen to me. Whoever's doing this to us, they're not just exposing what we did. They're actively sabotaging us. Our car got repossessed yesterday. The apartment we were going to rent in Jacksonville fell through because the landlord received an anonymous tip about our background. Someone is hunting us. Jacksonville. So they had settled on a destination after their original plans fell apart. Maybe you should turn yourself in. Turn myself in for what? Borrowing money from my own family? Taking out loans using family information? Craig's desperation was turning to anger. What we did might be morally wrong, but most of it isn't technically illegal. What about the elderly people your girlfriend stole from? The silence on Craig's end stretched for nearly 10 seconds. How do you know about that? The same way someone else knows about it. The same way the police know about it. The same way Vanessa's former employer knows about it. I kept my voice steady, though my heart was racing. Craig, you didn't just betray your family. You helped that woman steal from innocent people. I didn't. Craig struggled with words. Look, Vanessa had some problems at her old job, but that was different. What we did with your money was just family business. Family business? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You abandoned your son and stole his future to run away with a criminal. She's not a criminal. She made some mistakes, but she's trying to start over. We both are. The clicking from upstairs stopped suddenly. A moment later, I heard Mason's bedroom door open and his quiet footsteps on the stairs. Craig, I think you need to face reality. Your girlfriend is going to prison for embezzlement. You're probably going to prison for fraud, and Mason and I are going to rebuild our lives without you. Prison? Craig's voice jumped an octave. Mom, nobody's going to prison. This is all just a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion. Mason appeared in the kitchen doorway, moving silently to stand beside my chair. He held up his laptop screen, showing me what looked like a news article. The headline read, "Local financial advisor arrested in embezzlement scheme." My breath caught. Craig, you should probably turn on the news. Why? Your girlfriend was arrested this morning. The sound that came through the phone was somewhere between a sob and a scream. That's impossible. She was just here an hour ago. We were planning our next move. Where is here? The Sunset Motel, on Route 9, Room 12. Craig's voice was becoming increasingly frantic. Mom, if they arrested Vanessa, they're going to come for me next. I need help. I need money to get out of town. Mason walked to the kitchen counter and picked up a notepad. He wrote something quickly and showed it to me. Keep him talking. Police are 5 minutes away. My heart nearly stopped. Mason had called the police. Craig, running isn't going to solve anything. Running is the only thing that's going to keep me out of prison. Craig's breathing was becoming labored. Mom, please. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm your son. You raised me. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for something when you were the son I raised. The person on this phone is a stranger who stole from his own child and left us with $12. 12? Craig's voice cracked. Mom, there should be more than that. I didn't take everything. You took everything, Craig. Our savings, Mason's college fund, even Linda's memorial account, everything. I can pay it back. Once this investigation blows over, I can get another job, make payments, fix everything. How are you going to pay back money you helped steal from 17 elderly people again? Silence. Craig, how do you know the exact number? Mason held up another note. Don't answer that. I know because the evidence is public now. Police, lawyers, victims, families. Everyone knows what you and Vanessa did. Someone's been feeding you information. Craig's voice turned suspicious. Mom, who have you been talking to? Did you hire a private investigator? I don't need to hire anyone, Craig. You and Vanessa were sloppy. You left digital fingerprints everywhere. Digital fingerprints? Craig paused. Mom, you barely know how to use email. How would you know about digital fingerprints? Mason moved to the window and peered through the curtains. He held up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. Maybe I'm not as helpless as you thought. Mom, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Whoever's been helping you, whoever's been giving you this information, they're dangerous. They've destroyed my life. They've destroyed Vanessa's life, and they won't stop until—" The line went quiet, except for muffled voices in the background. "Craig, Mom." His voice was different now, defeated. "I have to go. The police are here." Through the phone, I could hear official voices, the sound of handcuffs clicking, someone reading rights. "Craig Bennett, you're under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit embezzlement." The line went dead. Mason closed his laptop and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "Is it over?" I asked. "The arrests are over. The recovery process is just beginning." Mason's voice carried the same calm certainty I'd grown to recognize. "But yes, Grandma, the part where we were victims is over. Now we get to be survivors." I looked at my grandson, this child who'd systematically dismantled 2 adult criminals with nothing but intelligence and determination, and finally understood what had really happened here. Craig thought some mysterious enemy had targeted him. He'd spent days looking over his shoulder, paranoid about who was hunting him down. He never suspected that his own son had been watching him all along. The boy he'd abandoned without a second thought had become the architect of his downfall. Mason hadn't just protected us, he'd delivered justice to every family Craig and his girlfriend had betrayed, and he'd done it all while keeping up with his homework and taking chemistry tests. My grandson had given Craig exactly what he deserved: consequences. Real family doesn't abandon each other when things get difficult. Real family doesn't steal futures to fund selfish dreams. But real family also doesn't let anyone hurt the people they love, not even when that someone shares their last name. 6 months later, I was reading a novel at my kitchen table when Mason burst through the front door with more energy than I'd seen from him since before Craig left. "Grandma, check this out." He dropped his backpack and pulled out an official-looking envelope. "It's from the district attorney's office." I set down my book and took the letter. The state seal at the top made my heart race. "Restitution payment," I read aloud, "in the amount of $18,400. That's from Vanessa's assets," Mason explained, practically bouncing on his feet. "They sold her car, her jewelry, liquidated some investments she made with stolen money. We're getting back almost half of what Dad took from us. $18,000. Not everything, but enough to breathe again. Enough to start rebuilding Mason's college fund." "What about the other families?" "Mrs. Miller got back $22,000. Mr. Hayes got his full amount because they caught Vanessa before she could move all of his money." Mason sat down across from me, his eyes bright with satisfaction. 17 families are getting something back. Not everything, but something. I folded the letter carefully, still hardly believing it was real. "And your father?" Mason's expression grew more serious. 5 years in federal prison. He pled guilty to avoid a longer sentence." He paused. "His lawyer says he might get out in 4 with good behavior." 4 years. Part of me felt relief that it wasn't longer. Part of me wondered if it was long enough. "How do you feel about that?" Mason considered the question with his usual thoughtfulness. "I feel like justice happened. Not revenge, just consequences." He pulled his laptop from his backpack. "But Grandma, I want to show you something else." The screen displayed what looked like a professional website. The header read, "Family Financial Protection Services, keeping families safe from financial fraud." "Mason, what is this? Remember how I said I wanted to help other families? Well, I've been working on this for months." He clicked through different pages showing services, testimonials, educational resources. "I've helped 12 families recover stolen money so far, and I've taught dozens of people how to protect themselves from financial fraud." The website was sophisticated, clearly designed, completely professional. At the bottom, I saw the founder's name: M. Bennett, Certified Financial Crime Prevention Specialist. Certified by who? I took an online course through the National Association of Financial Crime Investigators, passed their certification exam last month. Mason grinned. "I'm probably the youngest certified financial crime specialist in the country." I stared at my grandson, this remarkable young man who'd turned our worst experience into a mission to help others. Are you making money from this? Some. Enough to help with household expenses and start rebuilding my college fund. He pulled up another page showing client testimonials. But honestly, Grandma, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I know what it feels like when someone you trust betrays you, and I know what it feels like to fight back and win. A soft chime came from his laptop. Mason glanced at the notification, and his expression grew focused. I need to take this call. It's a family in Oregon whose teenage son has been stealing his grandmother's Social Security checks. He stood up, already shifting into his professional mode. Mason, wait. I caught his hand. Are you happy? Really happy? He paused, looking at me with those serious brown eyes that reminded me so much of Linda. I'm proud, Grandma, of what we survived, of what I can do to help people, of how strong we've become. He squeezed my hand. Dad thought abandoning us would break us. Instead, it taught us what we're really made of. After he went upstairs to take his call, I sat in my quiet kitchen, thinking about how much had changed. We'd moved to a smaller house across town, but it felt more like home than the Victorian ever had. I'd gone back to substitute teaching a few days a week, not because we needed the money as desperately as before, but because I missed working with students. Mason had grown 3 inches and developed the quiet confidence of someone who'd faced down real danger and emerged victorious. He still got straight A's, still helped with dinner, still kissed my cheek goodnight. But he also ran a business that protected families from financial predators. He spoke at community centers about digital security. He consulted with law enforcement agencies about cybercrime prevention. My 13-year-old grandson had become someone I looked up to. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID and froze. Springfield Correctional Facility. Craig. I stared at the ringing phone, remembering the last time we'd spoken. The desperation in his voice, the sound of handcuffs clicking, the moment his old life ended and his new reality began. The phone kept ringing. After 6 rings, it went to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. Springfield Correctional Facility. I picked up the phone and then, without answering, I turned it off. Some bridges, once burned, don't get rebuilt. Some forgiveness has to be earned, not demanded. And some consequences last exactly as long as they should. Upstairs, I could hear Mason talking to his Oregon clients, his young voice steady and reassuring as he explained how to document financial abuse and protect vulnerable family members. My grandson had learned that when someone hurts your family, you don't just survive. You make sure they can't hurt anyone else's family either. I smiled and went back to grading essays, listening to the sound of justice being served one phone call at a time. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Was I wrong to let Mason handle everything instead of going to the police myself from the beginning? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.